I am unashamed. What about you?
So I was laughing coming in here already today, hearing you two moan about all your various ailments.
Well,
I mean, you two are like the dry. I mean, I'm all spry. I guess I'm good because all I did was preach yesterday.
well, we're out there in the wilderness on our hands and knees. Of course, I'm digging for treasure, and Phil's gathering treasure in the form of mayhaw berries.
Yeah.
We hadn't had much sleep because Phil's been sore. I hadn't had much sleep because my dog we bonded over this issue. Hates flies as much as I do. So all night, I heard Missy get up and close the door to the bedroom. And I'm like, yep, she can't handle it. Because that dog kept barking, just wailing at the moon. So this morning she called me when I was on my way down here. She's like, that dog barked all night. I said, I know it.
Is that the one that's about 6 inches long?
Yep, the dog. Yeah. He's tiny. Buddy.
Yeah, Buddy.
How could so much noise come out of something so small?
Because we have a fly in
I
the
walked
house.
in your house and I just looked at him, and he looked at me and he just.
Yeah, that's why I like him. I like him for that reason.
I thought he'd been used to seeing you, but when I walked in there, he said, I don't like the guy on Facebook. Dan said he read all, everybody was singing my praises, the Corolla. I talked with Corolla on the podcast.
On his bucket.
One guy said, Phil Robertson, I strongly dislike you. That was all. That's all he said. I strongly dislike you.
In the strongest possible terms, he does not like.
I
Why is
strongly
that funny
dislike
to
you.
us? I think other people would be, oh no.
Some people get offended by it. It makes us laugh.
So the dog, the fly, and it's not a typical fly. There's different breeds of flies. Some of them
This is a buzzer.
A buzzer,
Yep.
and he flies so fast he never stops. Zoom, zoom.
And they don't light.
I've been seeing the same species in my house. It just he just comes by, but he's going so fast,
You can't.
and so I finally tracked one down the other day and finally bushwhacked him. I finally got him.
But you're a salt shooter.
Yeah, you're this.
I don't have the patience for that.
It was a 3-day hunt. It was 3 days.
Well,
before I
I'm
got
2
him.
days into this one,
Telling
and
you.
Missy's like, it's me or the dog on the way down here. She's like, you got to kill that fly because I can't handle this. But my right arm, I threw my hat because I had a fly swatter, had all my weapons. Usually I kill a fly within 5 minutes.
You used to be known for it, but it sounds like you're
how?
slipping.
But these, that's a little. This is.
It's a different ball game. I pride myself.
I
on
thought he was some kind of wasp at first, but then I looked. I said, I think that's a fly. But boy, he can really fly
it's a fly.
fast.
I pride myself on being an air traffic controller. And now that my dog is so upset about it, because every time it buzzes by, he just starts running around in circles, nipping at the air, barking, which I found it funny. I heard him barking, and I thought,
It's not so funny at 3 in the morning, though.
well, it was kind of funny to me. But Missy's hot. But I threw my hat at him, at the fly, and they say, because my arm's just throbbing. Right now, it's just... Because when you throw something that doesn't have a lot of weight, it does something to you. And
Not so much until you hit about the graybeard stage. and then
well, I guess so.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why my arm is throbbing right now because I threw something that didn't weigh but a few ounces.
That's funny.
But
you still are after the fly.
yeah, I'm in pain.
You wouldn't think a man. It never affected me before much. To squat down, and you pick up the mayhaws in front of you, knock them off the tree up there above them, they fall on the ground. It's muddy ground, so you're just, duck walking. You're down on the ground, and you're either crawling, then you kind of get up on your knees, and you're picking up mayhaws in front of you. You're just making a circle under a tree. Sometimes it's like water an inch deep and the potholes, but the mayhaws are hitting falling on the ground, you just waddling around in the mud. You wouldn't think that'd bother you too much, but whoo,
Yeah.
man, I didn't have any help but just me picking them all up,
So you got you a crew today.
Yeah, the cavalry's coming today.
Yeah.
So Alex is coming, bringing a friend. BK came out with me this morning. So
I always wondered way back when we were children, like, 8, 9 years old, 7, 8, 9, on up from there, that when they got time to pick the mayhaws every spring, they come in Mayhaw, H-A-W. This is one.
yeah,
brought
you
some to
brought
show
some on set to show. For those of you that are watching, you get to look. They
like
look like a little small, just a baby apple,
A
Well,
baby
that's
apple.
tiny
That's
baby
a
apple.
beauty.
When the Almighty, in his wisdom, made the mayhaw tree, he said, human beings will covet this. They will love to run up on this. Deer love them. Squirrels love them. Birds love them. So everything is flying to the trees to eat them. But we get them. Here's what, see here? See down in the bucket there? You crawl on your hands and knees. You say, have you ever run up on a cottonmouth moccasin during the mayhaw picking? Almost every time.
Yeah.
So you have to watch where you're going. They grow best where it floods and then it's dry. It floods and it's dry. The terrain is kind of like
Swampy,
not
muddy,
swampy, but not
all the time water. Right?
right up above where it floods and then it's dry.
So I got a question about that. So if we've had a lot of backwater.
Yep.
If the trees are in a lower area where there's water all the time, they probably don't yield as
They'll
much.
die.
Yeah,
They can't grow in the water, but where it floods and then reseeds,
yeah.
that tends to be where they grow in all these river systems. I think they go far over as South Texas, probably, in East Texas, probably Southern Alabama, I would think, Georgia, Florida.
There's
Yeah,
a
that's
guy-
where they're at. They only grow in the U.S.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
There's a guy that I know that used to work he was a counselor at camp, a long time ago. But he lives somewhere between Houston and Lake Charles on the Texas side.
Yep.
But he has a mayhaw tree farm.
Oh, yeah.
So he produces them to make jelly because in Louisiana and East Texas you can buy them in the store because there's enough people harvesting them making jelly.
Oh yeah.
The
and
jelly,
I
by
think
the way,
they
here's
There's the finished product.
the finished product. That's sliced shears. And so you whittle down your supply, but you have other things. We have dewberries, blackberries, muscadines, sloes.
We talked
That
about sloes.
Fall plum comes in August, but these are some of the first. These mayhaws and dewberries get ripe at the same time, first week in May. So we just hit May, therefore we're picking up mayhaws and you get the kids all out there. The reason I mentioned when we were kids, they'd say mayhaw picking. So that meant everybody dropped what they're doing, no matter what they were doing. Everybody load up. A lot of kids. I always wondered about it, but now labor force. you get 10 kids on their hands and knees, they can really pick up a lot of
mayhaw. I
mayhaw.
got my youngest daughter and one of my younger granddaughters.
Yeah, so we're bringing the kids today. When I walk away from this podcast, it's mayhaw. We got mayhaw picking, mayhaw cleaning, clean all these up. You have to get all the dirt and everything off of them, see? So
I remember one
big tubs of what y'all remember.
I remember multiple years. I don't know if Jase you remembered or not because you
Yes.
were. You
Yeah,
remember?
I mean,
Okay.
Well, I just remember every year.
What do you remember when
We
when
would
Dad
go.
got it? We had first moved down here, so you were about 7 or 8, and Dad knew at the time you had not really explored this area.
That's right.
So the only place you knew where they were was back in the river bottoms where you used to hunt.
Yep.
So it's about a hour and a half, 2 hour drive from here.
Yep.
And so we loaded it all up, Granny, Paul, all the kids, and we went up there and we took number 3 wash tubs with us.
Yep.
2 or 3. And we got out there in that swampy area. And of course, we were sending Jase and me and the kids up the tree and they shake the trees. So y'all had the idea that you took bed sheets.
Yep.
Granny and Paul were with us too, and took bed sheets and held it under the tree, and then we would have to pick the sticks out.
Yep.
Then you would pour it into the tub. We wound up with at least 2 number 3 wash tubs.
Yeah.
Just think about how many berries that is, and how much
Oh.
jelly that produced.
Oh,
We
yeah.
talk about an operation. But I'll never forget it. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
one of those things that sticks into your
I
brain.
mean, that's the best thing if you can have something like a net. I think I've seen a lot of people, they use like big nets.
Yeah.
Kind of like you would.
Some years the backwater is under them,
So they'll
like
be floating.
2 feet, 3 feet. We literally last year pulled our boat underneath the trees, and the water was like 6 feet deep. So you couldn't even get out of the boat and stand there.
You had to-
So we just were in the boat, and we pulled up under them. We got us a tarpaulin type thing. We'd put them up and they'd shake them, and then we'd take them and put them. We got them like that. But instead of picking them up when they hit the water, the ones that bounced off and hit in the water, we had little nets about like this
Yep.
with handles on them, and we just would. But it was a lot quicker if you got water on the trees.
Oh yeah, because you
I
scoop
mean,
them
get them quick. That
Plus,
way.
they're not as messy as they are in the
Oh,
mud.
they good and fresh. Just hit
Well,
the
so
water.
I want to say from now, for going forward, Dad, so you, especially for your own body's sake, call us, because I want my kids and grandkids to be involved in it. I mean, we're talking about 5 generations now,
No doubt about it.
because you did it as a kid.
I have not missed a mayhaw picking and jelly making since I haven't missed one at all. Even when we went to Tech,
Yeah.
when I was going to college, I'd go get the mayhaw. And a lot of them guys I was going to school with, they said, do what? But some of them were familiar with them, but most of them.
Well, I've got a pretty good little line of cooks that are here now between Stone and Alex and BK. So I want to, because when you're gone, I still want to be getting mayhaw jelly. That's what I'm saying.
Families who pick mayhaws together stay together.
That's right.
We're getting
There's another T-shirt.
I'm just
Another
saying.
T-shirt idea.
I mean, I'm looking at y'all. Y'all remember the days, and you look at it with a fondness. It's a fond.
No, I
Since
agree.
we're getting poetic, I'm gonna read a poem.
Don't get me confused with being a poet now.
Well,
Chase is a poet. He just doesn't know it.
I heard this one time. I think most people in the world have heard this poem. Y'all probably heard this. This was written by Joyce Kilmer, and I think he wrote this in 1913.
So it's a man.
So-
Choice is a man.
Yeah, it's actually a man.
Okay.
He was killed in World War One. He was only like 30.
I've heard that name before. So
Yeah,
I must have-
you've heard. There's been a lot of, because the reason it got my attention is people didn't. This has kind of been a controversial poem because people they don't like it because he was a man of faith, and he wrote this epic poem about trees, but he cleared half his trees and would burn a fire in a heartbeat. So they're like. That's why it was. I mean, even today, people still talk about this. So it's real short, but I'll read it. It says, and he has kind of some romance. This is PG-13, but it's more about us participating, like the fruit of the tree that we believe God has produced.
All right, hang on. Let's take a break before you read it. So obviously we've been talking a lot about pain, especially with you two. The crawling around on the ground has produced some new aches and pains in all of us. And Dad was right. It's the older we get, the more we seem to recognize that. Would you say that's not true, Dad?
I think the reason you could crawl under a tree when you were 10 years old, there's a difference between when you're 75 years old.
That's true. A lot of years. It was
Creaking. Your body begins to creak.
It creaks.
Yeah.
And the reason why I found out from a conversation I had with Dr. McQuillan, the doctor who put the research into Omega XL, is inflammation. Apparently inflammation is what causes all of our pain issues. And we had a very interesting chat about that. So they come out with this product, Omega XL, that we talk about a lot and we all take. It comes from mussels that they farm in New Zealand, which is pretty amazing, the story behind it. So it's all natural. And if you want to check these guys out, because I know you got some aches and pains out there, it will help. OmegaXL.com/Phil. You buy one bottle, you get second bottle free. So they're going to give you a 2-month supply there when you order. OmegaXL.com/Phil, or you can call them 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888.
I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree.
That's pretty good.
Y'all haven't heard that before?
I don't
No.
think so.
Oh, I love it.
That's
But I love anybody who appreciates trees.
Yeah.
Every by their fruit, they will know. You will recognize them. That's the three of us. You say, how are people going to recognize who we are? Now you have some people that I mentioned a while ago. Phil Robertson, I strongly dislike you. Period. He didn't say why. By their fruit, you will recognize them, Al.
Yep.
Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? The answer is no. Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Thus, by their fruit, you will recognize them, which is pretty cool.
Who said that and where is that?
Jesus Christ said that back a little over 2,000 years ago in Matthew chapter 7. The context of that is watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they're ferocious wolves. It says, by their fruit, you will recognize them. And that, therefore, the explanation. When you see somebody who's always trying to slick you out of a few dollars, or you see somebody that's got the little wink and the shuffling of the feet, and then, that's loudly talking, yeah, got a lot of air, but there's not much substance to it. You say, you know what, bad tree.
Because from the fruit, right?
That's amazing.
The fruit tells the story on, like behind the scenes, or you're whoring around, getting drunk, you're running around there, you're playing a game. Well, that catches up with you, and the fruit you bear is going to tell the story.
That's right. Days you got a call you need to take.
This is good fruit here. That's
so
good fruit.
let me ask you a question that's interesting since you brought that up about the false teachers. So on part of Willie's property, right next to his big lake that Jace frequently sneaks around and catches fish out of.
Yeah.
So there's a beautiful stand of mayhaw trees.
Yeah.
And look,
Willie planted them.
Oh yeah, look, and they
had somebody plant them.
had them planted.
Yeah, I was fixed to clarify that.
Yeah. So he had the guy, they sprayed for this, that, and the other. And they've got like things that, around it, like a hold it up, 4 deals to where it grows straight.
Yeah.
They're beautiful trees. I mean, it's a nice little stand. 0 mayhaws in 4 years.
None of them won't bear mayhaw. They told me that. And
So what's the deal, you think?
I don't know. But first of all,
It's talking about not producing.
I went to the woods and I located little bitty mayhaw trees in the middle of the woods. So I went out there by boat, walked up to where I found them, and I knew there were mayhaw trees, big ones, but I was looking for little bitty seedlings. So the little seedlings, if it's for what it's worth, I just took a shovel, had me a tub, and I just dug around them and pried them up out of the ground. I had a little root wall with some dirt on it with a little mayhaw tree. The mayhaw tree was like 8 inches long, little bitty one. So I just took me a tub full of them, got out there, walked out, pulled back up in my yard, which it floods in our yard, and then it's off, it's dry, and it's wet. I said, they'll grow good here. So there's a little drain going down through the front of my house there.
Yeah.
And I planted about 8 trees right there, little bitty trees. I watched them, and they kept growing and kept growing. It took about several years for them to get up there and start bearing fruit. But as soon as I walk out of here today, I'll go under those trees. Those seem to be the best producers that in the wild or wherever. Those right there,
You transplanted them.
Yeah. So in Willie's, somebody said if there's a cedar tree within eyesight from where you.
And there's a bunch of them because there used to
He's
be.
got cedar trees.
Yeah.
They said where you see a cedar, a mayhaw, nope, no fruits coming off that
Really?
tree. So it's kind of like running with the wrong bunch. Cedars and mayhaws, they don't mix.
I like
If there's a cedar tree there, a mayhaw tree is never going to produce fruit.
So the Howards years ago grew Christmas trees there, and some of them, a bunch of them were cedars, and there's 2 huge ones in my backyard.
Yep,
and within eyesight of the mayhaw.
Someone said, "No, you tree experts."
If somebody out there knows in Unashamed land,
I wish I knew. By the way, how about if I can take a track hoe? Some of my mayhaws, I planted them in lower elevations where there's too much water, but I'd like to move them to higher ground. Can you take a track hoe and just dig you a hole up there where it gets a little higher? Just take one big scoop of dirt out, go down there and lift one of them mayhaw trees. They're like bushes from about here to the ceiling.
Yeah,
they're like 6-7 foot right now. They haven't been planted that long. I planted them.
Yeah.
So got them out of the woods. So I got about 40 trees there. Well, a lot of them had mayhaws on them this year, but the freeze, you had a unusual freeze in March, and that hurt them. Yeah. So now they're producing this year about a third of what they normally produce. But I just wondered if a tree expert, whoever one of y'all knows, can I just wait till the fall of the year, dig one of them mayhaws? It'd be 1 scoop of tobacco, of track hoe, big bucket. Just lift it up, dirt and all. Can I move it up the hill a ways and stick it in another hole I've dug?
Why are you wanting to move it?
We're at a little higher elevation. That's
too much water.
Not as much flood. I planted those a little low because the last 4 years,
but most
the
trees
backwater
I've
came
seen
over the top of them.
Right.
But most trees I've seen are in the lower elevation, the mayhaw.
Me too. But in this case, I said, if the backwater's going to get them 4 out of the last 5 years, the backwater came over the
too high,
and they looked pretty rough after all that was over. Too much water. I need to move up some higher elevation.
So you Unashamed? I know somebody out there.
You tree expert. When do I transplant?
So here's where you send it, al@restorationproductions.net. That's where you send that information.
When do you transplant mayhaw trees, if at all? Can you do it?
It's a fair question.
It's a good question.
I'm glad but you also said those trees didn't produce for how long? How long did it take them before they produced?
Several years before. You'll plant them and they'll turn into a bush about waist high, no mayhaws. Whoa. They go chest high, no mayhaws. They go just about eye level. When they get about that high, you're standing at 6-7 foot. I'll notice they start blooming a little bit.
Dad does tree growing like he does time. It's it's where it relates on your body.
You have to be patient.
So this is Genesis 2:8. It says, now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east in Eden, and there he put the man. And the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food.
There you go.
I mean, when I think about, because there's a lesson in there somewhere, you talk about it takes years to produce the fruit. Yeah. But I'm like, when you think about what happened around the tree, of course, you have the 2 trees in the middle of the garden, the tree of life, which think about how spectacular that was. Somehow or another.
And it was producing some fruit that they were eating, that because of that happening, they were either not going to die or live a very, very long life.
Well,
which is my theory has been, whatever was in that is why they live so long. That and populating the earth, because I mean, you had people living 800-900
but
years.
Al,
this might have been the key here, because I'm 75 and still going.
Well, they say Phil that the mayhaw, to get off track here, the mayhaw, it actually has a ton of health benefits if you just eat it off.
Ooh, it's a little bit tart, right?
Well, yeah, but
I've eaten any one of them.
Yeah, I have too.
But once you make the jelly, it destroys all the.
Oh, you broke down all the.
You broke down all the good stuff.
Well, it could be that cup of sugar that goes in each jar.
But
anything that any kind of fruit that you see deer descend on, birds descend on, and a fox squirrel unfortunately, this morning was in one of my mayhaw trees.
Ooh, bad call.
But now he's a dead squirrel now because I said, son, you're messing around at the wrong time of year. But I looked at where he'd been eating them up there, so I just saw him come out of the little mayhaw tree. It's about 12, 15 foot tall now, one of them transplanted, but the mayhaws are beautiful. That squirrel was up there eating them. Well,
Because now he can't quit.
Well, that's right.
He's got a taste
He's
for it
hooked.
now. Yeah.
He came down out of the tree, but he made the mistake of going up a bull pin oak right over there about 30 yards. I just reached in my truck, grabbed my rifle, pow. He hit the ground. I said, okay. Nice. So now today I will have mayhaw jelly and fried squirrel.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this.
Life is good down on the river.
So, hang on, let's take a break. So, Jase, we've established that sleep is a big part of your marital bliss. Would that be maybe a good way to characterize it? Because the Missy's...
well, we go back and forth 2 locations. I sleep better. Well, I sleep when she's there.
Yeah. And you don't sleep too much.
When she's not there, it's about 4 hours. I'm up and at 'em.
Well, one of our sponsors that has helped your family and mine with sleep is Helix. They make wonderful mattresses. And so they first, they wanted one of us to try their mattress. And so you tried it first. You went online, you took a little quiz, found out do you like it firm? Do you like it soft?
Easy.
Very easy to do. Yeah. And then they sent it and they slept on it and loved it. And so then we started buying them because they were great. And I can say, because I sleep on one at my Alabama place, that it's fantastic. You get so you go online at helixsleep.com. Take the little quiz. It's a 10-year warranty. And also you can try it risk-free for 100 nights. So that's over 3 months, so you can know whether you love it or not, but you're going to love it. And also, if you go there now, you're going to get $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows. So you want to check this out, helixsleep.com/unashamed. That's helixsleep.com/unashamed. $200 off, 2 free pillows, and a great night's sleep. So, Jase, that's the difference in the garden to now, because they weren't eating the squirrels till later at Genesis 9. So now we can enjoy both. I mean, what you think is pretty good.
You got a mayhaw tree, fruit on the tree, squirrels in the tree. I mean, it's just
it's almost heaven.
Life is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to make the point is, then you have this scene around these trees. Because as much as God showed that he was the ultimate gardener and the planter, which I like, because that's why I read that I was familiar with that poem, because when I ran across that, he had come across the same conclusion I had. When you stare at the different kinds of trees, you're like, somebody made this.
And plus, you're careful on how you cut them. By the way, Jase, that 400 acres that me, you, and Willie bought. Last year, I was in my boat, and I was kind of flagging a place out there, getting ready to make a duck hole out there. But I looked down on that 400 acres. Mm-mm. Now, we never owned it, so I never have had anything to do with this land. But I saw one mayhaw floating along on the water. The water was about 3 feet deep at the time. I'd eased up in there in a boat.
You should have called and
told me that. I looked at that mayhaw, so I know now, out there somewhere, there's 400 acres, which you got to, and it floods big time, and then it floods and it's dry, and it floods and it's dry. But out there somewhere, that mayhaw came off a mayhaw tree, and I didn't plant these. This was a wild one, but I've got to locate that. Now, if there had been a lot of mayhaws, I could have said, okay, we really got something, but I didn't see but one mayhaw. But it did tell me there is a mayhaw tree out here. I've got to find it, make sure we don't damage that.
That's the new project.
Well, I had a theory on this, on why this happened under the trees and why God chose the knowledge of good and evil, which you think about it, he gave us the ability to choose. And so you have one tree, because I'm sure they were taken care of. Can you imagine? Which fruit to me is the perfect food, because you don't have to do anything but just walk by and grab it. And you don't even damage the tree.
That's
There's
right.
no plowing. You just walk by and pluck, eat. And the reason where I'm going with this is I believe God did that because he's providing. It's not based on your,
ability.
here it is. Let's live in harmony. I've given you everything that you need. Just don't do this and do this.
At the
and
time,
you will live.
they're all vegans at the time.
Yep.
That's right. And so here comes the evil one who basically doesn't disclose the consequences and the pain and suffering for making a choice that is against God's will, but he makes them say, "Oh, you'll be gods." I mean, the equivalent of it. Don't you want to know? And so,
And don't you think it's interesting that God put the choice, because the choice had to be out there for humans, but he put it in what they saw every day. I mean, they, like Jay said, they're picking fruit everywhere, but there was that one tree. He said, "No, don't pick anything off of that."
Human nature.
I mean, I wonder how many times that they walked by that tree, and just thought, "I gotta
Look at all the
even before Satan.
look at all the fruit that's running around on two legs. The fine babes, the chicks. You say, boy, there's a gigantic horde of them out there. You say, you're a married man. You say forbidden fruit. Well, men or women are just drawn to it. Well, I know I'm not supposed to do this. And finally, they just make a mockery of the whole thing.
a bad decision.
Just dig in with both hands. They never get enough. I mean, it
never pays off. It's always a bad decision.
well, because you got to remember that all these trees, these physical trees, they were all good because God there's no sin in him. There's no, everything was, when he made it all, he said everything is good.
Yep.
But by giving that choice, because I think people have trouble trying to figure out, well, why did God allow evil in the world? Well, when you look at it from just the tree standpoint, it kind of makes sense. It's like he provided a garden, he made the people, we're going to live in harmony, but there's got to be a choice to have a relationship.
Right.
So it makes me think of that verse where I think it's in Corinthians. It said knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. Because here you have the tree of knowledge and they wanted to know. But if they would have had love for God, it would have triumphed the curiosity. Because, in our culture, you see the same thing. They're like, knowledge is power. But I'm like, but love is more powerful. Because it's more relational.
Right.
Because when you know and know and know, you get puffed up. So there you have the evil one come in, which what was his problem? We know, where's that? Ezekiel 28, and I think in Isaiah, his pride had caused his problems.
His fall in the other realm was because of that.
And like Phil referred to, then it's like misery loves company. So here we see an opportunity, throw a few lies in there, and next thing you know, we're off the rails. I just think it's interesting that then later on you get a passage like what's found in Galatians when Paul was describing what happened on the cross. Because here you have the inside of a tree, how you make a cross, which is actually the same principle here that God is providing. You just walk by and there's the fruit. Same thing with the cross, but now it's a dead tree that's being used instead of a live tree that's being misused. I mean, it's a pretty good point how you think about it, especially when you ride the wave of knowledge versus love. And you ultimately, the greatest knowledge is knowing Jesus. I mean, how many times do you see that phrase in the New Testament? Right. I want to know Jesus. Philippians 3 comes to mind.
The author, you've disowned him. Peter said they disowned Jesus when he went before Pilate, and Pilate was going to let him go. They said, nope, crucify him, kill him. And it says, you have killed and murdered the author of life, Al.
Yeah.
Author of life. You said, whether it be a tree or a man,
right?
It's the Almighty author of life. You're like, that's a far cry from salt water made it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Us or trees.
That's all right. Let's take another break. And I hadn't thought about it, Jase, but you're right. What's that? There's a verse that's quoted, a prophetic verse that says, "Cursed is he who hangs on a tree."
Yeah, that's Goliath. That's Goliath. That's the one I was talking about.
Yeah, and so, but you think about it, you go back. So there was always that idea that a tree was going to still be involved. But some of the other prophetic ones in Zechariah, I think it's Zechariah 6, and some of the other ones called this Messiah the branch. And it gave this idea, this picture of a stump.
A lot in there about trees.
It is. There was a stump that had been
branches.
cut down, but what happens is you see a stump, you start seeing those shoots come up, and that's what it compared Jesus to in Israel. They would be a cut off tree, but out of that would come this idea of
trees are one of the most resilient things that you can run up on.
Well, but
those
but
mayhaw
you don't have
trees,
to do any work, Phil. I think that's the whole point.
Yeah.
I planted them trees over there. I'm telling you, 3 or 4 years in a row, the water got 20 feet deep in there. I mean, way over them. You would think, they're blooming. Here comes all this water and floods them.
Yeah.
I thought, well, these things, it's going to kill them. Look, one tree out of about 40 succumbed to all that water, and then some of them looked a little rough, but they just bust right back out in the spring of the year with the water off of them. This year we got us a dry year. Basically, the river's not up real high, so I'm roaming around in territory I haven't been able to go but by boat the last 5 years. But this year, the trees are there, and I'm just amazed. And they got mayhaws on them. I'm like, boy, when he made a mayhaw tree, that is one tough tree is all I got to say about it.
We did at our house this year, we did an upgrade on all our landscaping. And so we planted all these new bushes and dwarf azaleas and all these different things. And then that big snow ice freeze came for a week here. Yep. And they were I saw the weight of it on there, and I said, well, I told Lisa, I said, that's money down the drain. I said, there ain't no way that has to kill everything. That we just put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all that melts away when the spring hits. You wouldn't believe it. Everything in my yard looks twice as colorful and big as it's ever been. I was stunned. I was
Miss Kay has a yard full of roses out there, and she said, "Oh, look at my rose trees. This year, they survived the storm, the water, the ice,
snow. I mean, you're right. It's resilient. I mean, it's
I also noticed when I was in Israel, there was a lot of little fruit trees and olives and fig trees, date trees, and it just. I think he made a point to show you, you can try to justify just it happening by luck. But I'm telling you, the more you look at trees, the more you're seeing a designer do that. I thought about Revelation 22 because it starts off with God being the gardener and has this relationship. And then, the last book of the Bible, people focus so much on the timing of this, but they miss the point. In description of our relationship with God, he says in chapter 22, the angel showed me the river of the water of life as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb. Down the middle of the great street of the city, on each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. I mean, no matter what the timing of this is.
And they have fruit on them year round.
Yeah.
They
Which to me represents that God provided a way. And when you see a tree, it's a reminder of that to me.
Yeah.
right.
And it's not based on my effort. You're like, well,
Jase, you realize there are some who's going to say, oh my goodness, he's a tree hugger. Jase is a tree hugger. So what's your answer to that?
Do we have a frog in here?
A frog is singing singing in the distance.
A tree frog, literally on cue.
Has just spoken. It was a tree frog.
Josh, did you bring that frog in here?
Did you do that?
that tree frog is saying, "Hey, don't forget me over here. I make a living in them." So, Jase, what's your answer to someone?
We're the only podcast in the world that has a tree frog in their studio.
That started chiming in when we're talking about trees.
I've gone on record saying that trees.
There he is.
It is a tree frog.
That's a tree frog.
That's unbelievable.
If you were looking for a sign, I think we got it.
We are on target today. This podcast, the Almighty is saying, you boys are on to something.
Or maybe it's the evil one saying,
by the way, the chance of a tree frog being inside this little room right here, what are the odds on that? There is a tree frog on the premises.
The skepticism I have for anybody in
people are gonna
media,
think we set that up.
Yeah, is I'm looking at this guy thinking, did you actually do that? But he didn't.
He didn't.
But I've gone on record of saying that trees don't need hugs. That's part of my speech. People do.
Yeah.
But so I'm not a tree hugger, and I do like from my poet that I quoted. You realize that the one who made the tree is the target, and I love trees. Especially like when I'm metal detecting, the biggest, oldest tree, that's where I'm headed first. Because it tends to gather, make a foundation for anything that came along that way. It holds up there in the roots.
I know this. The Robertson clan, one of the things that came out of the blessings from the Almighty is we have purchased a lot of trees.
Yeah.
We have a lot of trees.
We did.
I love trees.
It's big enough where you can literally disappear there for a while, and you're a long way from anybody. It's pretty nice.
But that's the point. When you detached the tree from its maker, then you just got a tree.
Right.
That's it. By the way,
that dies.
These tree people, I don't know what do you call if you major in trees, you're in college, what do you call that?
Horticulture? Is it?
Horticulture?
I don't know.
Well, one of you
that
horticulturists.
popped into my head.
Sure.
Yeah, whoever you are, you tree people out there. This is called a mayhaw because they get ripe in May. It's sometimes late April, sometimes you have an April haw, but a haw tree all of them produce berries, and they have certain things in common. All of them are full of thorns. Where this fruit grows, that mayhaw tree, it is thorns. I mean, you don't want to just reach up there, and if you want to shake a limb, you watch where your hand's going. You break those thorns off, but it's full of thorns. But some of these trees, they produce berries, but they're not red berries. They're just green berries.
Well, horticulture
wait a minute, Jase. They got berries hanging all over them, but they literally, they say, are very poisonous. So there's a lot of haw trees producing berries, just hanging on them, but they're green. And you say, so how do you ascertain which one are poison and which one are not? What you look for is you say, does a squirrel eat them? They say squirrels won't bother them. Will a bird eat them? A bird won't touch them. You deer when they fall, but these don't fall. They just hang on the tree all the time. Green berries.
There's a lot of that. Like a cashew nut, the hull, you notice you don't get them with the hull because the hull will kill you.
Well, there you go.
And like tomato plants, the fruit's good, the plant makes you sick.
The first person who, probably an indigenous tribe, one of them walked up to a mayhaw tree and he said, he could smell them because they smell in the woods. You can smell them. This fruit, boy, it smells great. Well, good and well, they picked a few of them and looked. They said, I just wonder.
Well, and they probably watched the guy that picked the other one and fall over.
They'd say, you tried, give it to the youngest one out there, and let him eat it. Watch him for a few hours, and if he's jumping around happy, you're like, okay, I think we can eat that. Somebody had to try.
Do that in reverse. You give it to the oldest
That's
one.
right. Hang on. Let's take one last break.
I was just going to read the definition of horticulture because I might have got that wrong. It says the art or practice of garden cultivation and management. So we need to know, what's the study of trees?
Study of trees, if I know what that one is. So it's interesting because
there's somebody out there in computer land that's that knows about trees. I want to know about mayhaw trees. When do you transplant them? If you can transplant them like that, what time of year?
So
I'm thinking fall. In the fall, because the leaves.
Dendrology?
What is it?
Dendrology, the study of trees.
Dendrology.
Dendrology.
Oh,
I've never met a dendrologist.
Is there, the question today, is there a dendrologist listening to
If you're
Unashamed?
there, enlighten us on the
I
mayhaw
want to
tree.
hear from you, dendrologist.
Can you transplant them once they get to be 10 foot, 8 foot tall? Can you dig one of them up with a track hoe and put it in another hole on up the way a little ways? I want to know that.
So I was thinking about another concept that Jesus talked about in John 15 about fruit, and you mentioned it, the idea of pruning and working these things, because you're obviously taking something that God made.
I'd like to know about it. Should they be pruned from time to time?
Yeah, because he mentions in John 15 that God prunes us, and the idea is so we can grow more fruit. And I thought about you, even on our property. Sometimes you'll thin out certain areas so that the other trees that are there can be bigger, fuller. You can plant stuff underneath them now because they get sunlight. I mean, there's
for
a
the
lot
deer.
of
For the deer, most of our property over there, we fix it so there's at least always a steady supply of browse. In other words, deer are browsers. They go around, they eat leaves off of little bushes and stuff. Yeah. Well, if you just have open, big trunks of trees, dense forest, you say it's not very conducive to wildlife because there's no browse there.
Yeah.
So with the deer herd, you have to have a lot of browse. They need to be able to walk along and eat off this bush and that bush and this bush, eating leaves off of little shrubberies and little short trees. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
What we would call a thicket. Well, that's what deer thrive on. Right. So you can't have just open timber. It looks great. When the pioneers first got off the boat and started heading west, they went through blocks of timber. You could ride a galloping horse down through the woods and never even, the limb would never touch it. It was just huge trunks, so much so the canopy just made it dark underneath it.
Yep.
But there's not a big food supply for wildlife with that.
Yeah.
But they cleaned out the deer herd and the turkeys and everything else. These pioneers, when they started to cross here, I mean, there weren't no hunting seasons. They just went ahead.
That's how they survived.
That's
why I always thought you had storms and all, because I thought if
right.
you hadn't had that, then the trees wouldn't fall.
That's right.
And then you wouldn't have the little bushes and the vegetables.
God would knock them down from time to knock them down.
Well, he would just create a planet where that happened.
Yep.
And then the lightning strikes every once in a while, sets it on fire, so it'll grow out even more.
So then people are like, why are God doing this? Well, the people are the one that screwed it all up. They were living, everything was perfectly fine.
That's right.
Until obliteration and incorporation took off across the continent, and they just went to mowing down, plowing up. I mean, a lot of stuff. Now they're replacing a lot. Fellows like us replace a lot. We're looking after deer, ducks, squirrel. We're wanting to provide the habitat so everyone's happy out there, all the animals. A lot of them say, so y'all are into this thing like pretty deep. Well, we're into it real deep.
Well, since we're petitioning the audience, I was going through, I thought I was in South Louisiana, but I ran upon it was like a cheese, kind of Danish, but it had pecans in it, and it was called Mayhaw pecan tart.
It had Mayhaw in it.
Yeah. But I can't remember exactly where I was. My life is a blur. So it was like a little pie that had mayhaw and pecan. It was like a filling of some sort. But it was one of the greatest things I've ever eaten. And
our audience, this has never been opened. This was made in 2020. I got 20 on there.
Well, it is 2020, isn't it?
21.
Is it 21?
So this is last year's Jelly Jase.
Yeah.
But the reason I label them, I put on here 20, MH, Mayhaw, 20. But if our audience, I would say 98 to 99% have never wrapped their lips around Mayhaw jelly. If all of them together, we had enough to feed them all. If I set that down in front of them, everybody get them a teaspoon, and they bought jelly all the time. But if they took a spoon and dipped down in that and tasted that, they would say, "Oh my goodness!"
There was a guy, I think.
Listen, Mayhaw, you could plant Mayhaw trees in California instead of whatever they plant. and you could make a mint just by putting these out there, harvesting.
But that's why they produce them so much. There was a guy, I believe in Webster Parish, who he ate some jelly and got so excited he planted a tree. Well, now there's 1,000. It turned into 1,000 tree orchard.
Yeah,
and the commercialization of mayhaws.
Our neighbors, the Franklins, George Franklin, he said, if you ever get in trouble finding mayhaws, he said, just look me up. And I said, you got some mayhaw trees over in your parish, Franklin Parish. They own probably pretty well the whole parish.
You know, when the name of the parish is your name, that you probably own a little bit.
But anyway, he said, I've got 40 acres of them over there. You're free to come get them anytime. 40 acres. He planted 40 acres of mayhaw trees in a straight line. So I'm over here.
For you new listeners, in Louisiana, we call our counties parishes.
The only state in the union.
The only state. And you say, why do we do that? And what do you tell them?
Because we're just different.
Because Catholicism rolled through here way back.
Here we go. I didn't know you actually had an answer.
No, there is an answer. The Catholic churches have parishes, is what they call their spiritual gatherings or places or people, and so we got it from that. Our French Catholic.
Well, since we're in that vein, here's what I recommend for all weather people, because I know they don't. I'll probably offend them. They don't listen to our podcast.
Remember the saying, Mr. Robertson, I strongly dislike you.
Yeah, look.
Some people don't like you, Jace. Live with it, son.
When you don't know the names of the states or the parishes, don't fake a Southern drawl to try to make that feel better for the listener. You know, when you're going Lafayette, Lafayette,
or oh, you a cheater.
Oh, they can't say Lafayette.
Yeah,
can't do it. So but then they try to make up for it by an impersonation of a Cajun. Right. So they're like Lafayette. So it's like, because you can't understand half what they're saying anyway, because they mumble.
See, the word Ouachita, it looks like a cheetah or something.
Well,
but actually, it's an Indian word, Ouachita. Ouachita was actually a tribe of Indians, and it's Ouachita Parish. So we look at it like it's nothing.
Because the Ouachita River flows out of the Ouachita Mountains.
No, I heard one but they put it on everything. They're like Denham Springs.
Yeah,
I was like, no, it's just Denham. It's Denham Spring. It's not Daham. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more embarrassing.
Is in our family, Mom was a haulier up north, Hollier, but down south they call it Olier.
She's half Cajun, which all you South Louisiana people, my woman is half Cajun.
Yeah, she's the Olier.
It's a great blend.
Yeah.
Now, full blend, that's Olier. But they call them Holliers now up in North Louisiana.
Up here.
But or like down in the Chavalay Basin, Pierre Pont. It looks like Pierre Park. And people, they just butcher it.
Well, like Chavalay, where's the A?
Yeah.
They didn't need it.
No, they don't need it.
It begins with an A. You didn't need that. I would tell you to Google Chafalaya, but you're never going to be able to know how to spell it.
You'll never find it on Google.
But say that 5 times and feel good about it, and then you're on your way to learning the lingo.
We got to go.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.